Hello everyone and welcome back to my Unity development log series for Colonize. This week we'll be looking at getting the ships to move around and allowing them to colonize the metal-filled and energy-filled planets. First of all, we need to indicate visually to the player that it's possible for the ship to move. Do this by checking when the ship is selected for all adjacent hexes to it, using this little find adjacent function I created earlier in the grid manager. This just looks at the adjacent positions of each hex to the current one being checked and returns them. We then loop through them and for each one turn the hex green. This can be seen by selecting a ship. If I just click off the ship, you'll see there's nothing selected, and when I click the ship, these 6 green hexes around it show. When we deselect it, we then clear it with a very similar loop, just doing the opposite thing and turning off the green. Once a ship is selected and a hex is clicked, this is in the hex script now, on mouse down, we checked first to see if the ship is already moving, and if it isn't, once again do that check to see if the hex that was clicked is adjacent to the ship, and if so, we simply kick this ship move to hex script, which over here checks if it has any moves left. Each ship has its own number of moves, which can be designated in the Unity editor. And if so, then it moves towards this target hex. This is done by a simple if statement in the update loop, which checks if the ship is moving, and if so, where its target position is, and moves towards that position. This can be seen now in the scene. If I click this hex here, for example, the ship will move. The moves left are decremented by 1. I'll move it again now. And you can see that no longer any hexes are being shown as available move positions because the moves left of this ship are 0. It's all well and good having the ship move around in the scene, but it's not very useful if it can't actually do anything. You may have noticed this little button that I've created. Here's the tooltip, it describes it perfectly. Colonize an empty planet in this ship's hex. And we already know that the mining shuttle can be expended to colonize a metal-filled planet such as this one right here. So it's time to jump into the code for how we do that now. To designate which ships can colonize which planets, I added a string variable to the ship script, which can be designated in the editor. Here you can see the mining shuttle can colonize a metal planet, and that just checks against the tag of the corresponding planet. Here you can see metal planet is set to metal planet, and energy planet, this new one I created, this new model for this week, is tagged with energy planet. Then over in the game controller, we check to see whether the ship is in a hex with a planet of that type, and if it is, then we make the colonize button enabled. Once the button's enabled and can be clicked, its trigger event will be this colonize function in the game controller, which checks to find the planet, and at the moment just resource planets have this colonize function in them, but as the game expands there will be other types of planets you can colonize. Right now the resource planets will provide 1 metal or 1 energy per turn once they're colonized. So we call this colonize function, which can be seen here in the resource planet. It's very simple. It's just changing the mesh to signify that you've colonized, changing the owner, and adding the colonized building, which is just a simple building setup to say add this amount of resources per turn. It's a provider, as described last week in episode 4. So you can now see that when the ship is over the metal-filled planet, this colonize button is enabled, and when we click it, the mesh changes, the new object is selected, the new planet is selected, and this little +1 up here is showing that we're getting +1 metal per turn. So just to give an example of that, if I just grab some energy here, it's still got the +1 per turn. It will have as long as we own this metal-filled planet, and when we hit the next turn, the metal goes up by 1. Just to show the full process, I created also this week models for the science shuttle and the energy-filled planet, which you can see here with its crystals around it. So if we just go back to the home planet and create a science shuttle, you'll see the new little model spawning. It is at the minute sinking into the planets, but I intend to fix this with some modification of the ship's Y position based on what hex it's currently in. But if we just move it over to the new planet, we'll need to take some actions because the ship has no moves left during this turn. So we get on to the next turn, and the ship can move over here and colonize the new planet. Well, we get these little tents, and now we're getting +1 energy per turn as well. That's all for this week, folks. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please feel free to like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel. All support is appreciated massively. There may be a small break in content as I'm due to go away on a holiday for a couple of weeks, so I may not be able to get a regular weekly video out for the next week or two. However, content will be back soon, possibly expanding the grid and how planets are generated to be more accurate to the end game, or maybe getting some enemy ships in the game. I'm undecided in which way to go at the moment, but if you have any suggestions, if there's something in particular you want to see, please do let me know. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.